You grab a hold of Devin Haney, he's probably most likely dead.
Yeah. But you
grab a hold of me, you're dead.
Straight up.
I love it.
From Bradley Martin getting taken down by Dylan Dennis like he'd never stepped in a gym, to massive fitness influencers sitting across from real UFC fighters and not even realizing how out of their depth they are. These guys spent years building their bodies into something that turns heads in every room they walk into, and a single sparring session with someone who actually trains dismantled all of it in front of millions of people. And no one embodies that reality better than Bradley Martin. Bradley Martin is an American YouTuber and bodybuilder who weighs around 260 pounds of solid muscle, and he has made an absolute career out of claiming he could beat professional MMA fighters in a real fight.
If I could jump on you, then maybe. If I could hold you on the floor, sure.
Yes.
But in boxing, no, I know that's not how it works.
Even in a street fight,
I'd beat the out of you in a street fight.
Martin is a notorious troll in the combat sports world, and his signature move is insisting that his sheer size would be enough to overpower elite UFC fighters. He's claimed he could beat Demetrius Johnson, one of the greatest pound-for-pound fighters in history. He's claimed he could beat Sean O'Malley, the current UFC bantamweight champion. The idea that being 260 automatically makes you dangerous has literally become a meme in MMA circles because of him. So when Martin had Nate Diaz on his podcast in 2023, he couldn't resist asking if Diaz thought he could beat him in a street fight.
You think you beat me in a street fight?
Huh?
You think you beat me in a street fight?
You in a street fight?
Yeah.
You're a podcaster, brother.
I love it.
So the answer is then yes, yeah?
Nate Diaz, a man who has fought the absolute best fighters on the planet, who has wars on his resume that would make most people weep, looked at this 260-pound bodybuilder and basically laughed it off, telling him he was just a podcaster. Casual, dismissive, like it wasn't even worth thinking about.
Easy.
No, I was talking about me.
Yeah.
Because I asked Devin Haney. Devin Haney thought the boxer, he thought he beat me in a street fight.
Yeah, he probably f*** you up too, though.
You think so? Nah, you really think so?
Then Martin brought up that boxer Devin Haney had made the same claim. Diaz's response was just as brutal. He suggested Haney could probably take him apart too. The internet lost its mind, and then, as if the universe wanted to prove Diaz's point, a video resurfaced from August 2023 of Bradley Martin training with a BJJ brown belt, not even a black belt, a brown belt. And in the footage, Martin is getting pushed around, tossed, and completely dominated by a guy who is significantly smaller than him. All that muscle, all that confidence, and he looked helpless against someone with real grappling skill. Then in June 2024, Logan Paul, who is himself an amateur when it comes to real combat sports, claimed that he humbled Bradley Martin in an unsanctioned MMA fight. Logan Paul, a YouTuber and WWE wrestler, humbled the guy who thinks he could beat UFC champions. Let that sink in. But where does this delusion actually come from? To understand that, you have to go back to the very beginning, because this debate didn't start on YouTube or TikTok. It started in a sweaty arena in Denver, Colorado, on November 12, 1993, the night the UFC was born. 8 fighters entered a single elimination tournament that night to determine who would become the first Ultimate Fighting champion. There were no weight classes, no time limits, barely any rules. You had karate guys, boxers, kickboxers, sumo wrestlers, all of them coming in thinking their discipline was the one that would reign supreme. Most of them were big, intimidating men who looked like they belonged on the cover of a fitness magazine. And then there was Royce Gracie. Royce was 175 pounds soaking wet.
I've known Royce for a period of time, but to sit and grill Royce, to sit and ask Royce 20 questions about things that I've been wondering since 1993 when I was a junior in high school and watching him.
He was lean, unassuming, and frankly, he didn't look like he belonged in the same building as some of these guys. And that was entirely the point. See, the Gracie family had a choice. They could have sent Rickson Gracie, who was the family's most proven and most physically impressive fighter. But they deliberately chose Royce, the smallest, the least decorated of the family's fighters, because they wanted to prove something that would change combat sports forever. That technique beats size, every single time. Royce's first opponent at UFC 1 was Art Jimerson, a professional boxer who weighed 196 pounds. Jimerson was so confused about what to do on the ground that he famously wore one boxing glove into the cage. Royce took him down, controlled him like a child, and submitted him. Then came Ken Shamrock, a 220-pound professional shoot wrestler, a legitimately dangerous man. Royce submitted him too. Then Gerard Gordeau, a 216-pound karate black belt and kickboxer, same result. Royce Gracie, 175 pounds, ran through 3 men who were all significantly bigger than him in one night, and he did it so easily it looked like a magic trick. Royce himself later reflected that being the smaller, less intimidating fighter was actually the whole point. He wasn't supposed to look scary, that was the message. He went on to win UFC 2 and UFC 4, and in 2003, he and Ken Shamrock became the first 2 inductees into the UFC Hall of Fame. But the real legacy of Royce Gracie wasn't the titles, it was the destruction of the myth that the biggest man always wins. Now, the Gracie family didn't just prove this on the UFC stage. For decades before that, going all the way back to the 1920s, they ran what was called the Gracie Challenge. This was literally an open invitation to any fighter from any discipline to walk into their gym and test themselves against Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Kung Fu guys, karate guys, boxers, and yes, bodybuilders. There's rare footage from 1994 of a matchup that perfectly captures this whole debate. A 150-pound Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt against a 250-pound bodybuilder. 100-pound weight difference. The bodybuilder looked like he could fold the smaller man in half just by flexing. And the BJJ fighter absolutely dismantled him, outworked him in the stand-up, took him to the ground, and finished him with an armbar. 100 pounds lighter, and it wasn't even competitive. That footage tells you everything you need to know. But let's talk about why, specifically, big muscles are actually a liability in a fight. Because the science behind this is fascinating. The larger your muscles are, the more oxygen and nutrients they demand to keep functioning. That's fine when you're doing a set of bench press and resting for 2 minutes between sets. It's a catastrophe when you're in a fight and your heart rate is through the roof and you can't catch your breath after 60 seconds. We've seen it at the highest levels of MMA. Even Tyron Woodley, a former UFC welterweight champion who was incredibly muscular for the division, regularly struggled with his cardio inside the octagon. And Woodley was actually a trained fighter. Imagine what happens to someone who has 0 fight training and is carrying 260 pounds of muscle. Too much muscle means slower strikes because you're trying to move more mass. It means less flexibility, which kills your ability to throw kicks or defend submissions. It shortens your effective range of motion, and it absolutely murders your gas tank. An MMA fight can last 15 to 25 minutes of intense, non-stop exertion. Most bodybuilders are gassed after 90 seconds of actual combat. Now let's leave the world of internet bodybuilders and talk about someone who actually put their money where their mouth is in a very different way. Xu Xiaodong. Xu Xiaodong is a Chinese mixed martial artist who launched a one-man crusade against fraudulent martial arts masters in China. On April 27, 2017, Xu fought a self-proclaimed Tai Chi master named Wei Lei in Chengdu, China. The fight lasted about 10 seconds. Xu rushed in, threw basic MMA combinations, and Wei Lei crumbled. The master had no answer for even the most fundamental striking techniques. The video went mega viral, and it opened the floodgates. In November 2020, Xu fought another Tai Chi practitioner named Chen Yong, a man who had been publicly challenging Xu for 2 years. That fight also lasted 10 seconds. 10 seconds. And Chen Yong's excuse afterward might be the single greatest piece of copium in martial arts history. He claimed that the moment he stepped into the cage, he noticed the ground was too soft, that he'd been training on hard surfaces for a year, that soft surfaces somehow neutralized Tai Chi's power and force. My man blamed the floor. But here's where Xu Xiaodong's story takes a dark turn, and it's a part of this debate people don't talk about enough. In China, traditional martial arts like Tai Chi and Kung Fu aren't just hobbies. They're essential to the country's cultural identity. They bring in tourism. They fuel the film industry. They're a symbol of national strength and heritage. So when Xu started publicly exposing these so-called masters, he wasn't just winning fights. He was threatening an entire cultural apparatus. A Chinese court ordered him to pay 400,000 yuan, nearly $58,000, for insulting Tai Chi Grandmaster Chen Xiaowang. He was forced to publicly apologize on social media for 7 consecutive days. His social credit score was lowered. He faces travel restrictions. He and his family have been forced to go into hiding because he's regularly confronted by angry crowds in the streets. In July 2020, the Chinese Wushu Association actually urged practitioners to stop calling themselves masters. Xu Xiaodong's campaign literally changed institutional policy, but it cost him nearly everything. Mariusz Pudzianowski. Mariusz Pudzianowski is a legend. There's no other word for it.
You might come back.
Yes, of course. I come back now. It's rest because I have injury. Maybe next month in July I come back to competition.
The Polish strongman won 5 World's Strongest Man titles in 2002, 2003, 2005, 2007, and 2008, the most in the competition's 48-year history. With 43 international titles, a 70% win rate, 58 total wins, and 28 world records, he is widely regarded as one of the greatest strength athletes of all time. And in December 2009, at age 32, he decided to fight in MMA. Credit where it's due, Pudzianowski actually committed. He didn't just show up and try to muscle his way through. He trained. He learned. And over 15 years in the KSW organization, he compiled a record of 17 wins and 10 losses. He fought 27 times under the KSW banner. That's a legitimate career. Is it elite? No. But for a man who came from strongman competition, it's genuinely impressive. His diet during his strongman days tells you everything about the kind of animal we're talking about. Breakfast was 10 eggs and 2 to 3 pounds of bacon. Then lots of candy between meals for energy. Lunch was a double serving of Polish pork chops, sauerkraut, and potatoes. Then a workout. Then supplements. Then more chocolate. Then dinner was whatever meat he could get his hands on. Steaks, pork chops, more bacon, more sauerkraut, more potatoes. The man was a human furnace. But on April 26, 2025, at KSW 105 in Gliwice, Poland, the 48-year-old Pudzianowski faced another former world's strongest man, Eddie Hall, the first human to ever deadlift 500 kilograms. Hall crushed the scale at a staggering 334 pounds. Pudzianowski came in at 267. It didn't last long. Fans immediately pointed out that several of Hall's ground strikes clearly hit the back of Pudzianowski's head, which are illegal blows in MMA. Hall, to his credit, owned up to it backstage, apologizing and saying he wouldn't want the same done to him. He also revealed his right hand was broken after the fight. Pudzianowski, ever the gracious competitor, kept it simple. He acknowledged Hall was stronger, bigger, and younger, and that a moment of inattention was all it took. He lost, and he said so without excuses. And then the big man hinted that his time in MMA might be over, giving a non-answer when asked about what comes next. 15 years, 27 KSW fights, from the world's strongest man to a legitimate mixed martial artist. Whatever you think about his record, that's a journey that demands respect. So what's the takeaway from all of this? From Royce Gracie in 1993 to Eddie Hall and Pudzianowski in 2025, from Xu Xiaodong exposing fake masters to Bradley Martin getting reality checked by everyone from Nate Diaz to random brown belts. It's simple, and it's the same lesson it's always been. Skills beat size, almost every single time. It doesn't matter if you're 260 or 334. If you can't manage distance, if you can't control the clinch, if you have no answer for a takedown, if your gas tank runs dry after a minute, all that muscle is just dead weight. It's armor you can't take off, and it's working against you. MMA fighters don't just train their bodies, they train their minds. They develop fight IQ, the ability to read an opponent's intentions, to bait overconfident attackers into mistakes, to time a counter or a level change at the exact right moment. They know how to use an opponent's aggression against them. A bodybuilder throws a haymaker, and a trained fighter ducks under it and puts them on their back. Game over. The Gracie family understood this 100 years ago. They proved it in their gym. They proved it at UFC 1, and the combat sports world has been proving it over and over again ever since. But the fascination isn't going anywhere. People will always want to see the biggest, most jacked human being alive step into a cage with a skilled fighter. It's a primal curiosity, David versus Goliath, and every time it happens, the result is almost always the same. Because at the end of the day, muscles are built in the gym, but fighters are built in the fire. And if you're 260 pounds of solid muscle and you're thinking about calling out an MMA fighter, just remember how Nate Diaz made Bradley Martin feel, like a podcaster who wandered into the wrong conversation.